to 306.46 and continuation of 306.01 to 306.25. So who we have?
And Megan Tuttle and Irv are up first, and Julie Turner is on deck. When I tell you you're on deck, that just means you can come on and sit in the front row and be ready to go. You're up first.
No. This is gonna yeah, wait, yeah,
You still just get 3 minutes, even though you're two of you.
Yeah, I'll go quick. He's
Okay.
actually speaking. So for the record, Megan Tuttle, president at NEA New Hampshire, representing about 17,000 educators across the state. I was here last week and said I'd be back, so we are. I did bring Irv this time. He's going to speak. I do just want to turn this in for the record that we have a petition with almost 500 signatures. And there's more coming in. This is just where we were at as of this morning, supporting strong public school standards in New Hampshire. So I'll give this to Angela and she can make copies for everybody.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Irv Richardson. I'm the coordinator for public education and school support for NEA New Hampshire. I also teach in Southern New Hampshire University's doctoral program for educational leadership. I have experience as a classroom teacher, principal, as well as working in the Maine Department of Education and as the director of shared leadership for the Council of Chief State School Officers. You get to my age, you have a lot of experience. President Megan Tuttle and I were honored to work with the National Center for Competency-Based Education and the DOE since last November to make recommendations about what should be in the minimum standards. While working for the Council of Chief State School Officers, I was a member of collaborative committees of educators from throughout the country who developed national teacher standards and professional standards for educational leaders. I came away from my work on those committees understanding what a challenge it is to reach consensus with a document such as New Hampshire's minimum standards. From my work on standards documents, I took away several lessons that I think can be applied to our work with the 306s. One of the first lessons is the need for current updated standards. I commend the New Hampshire Department of Education and the National Center for Competency-Based Education and everyone who was a part of the 306 work group for their efforts to update the standards. As we are all well aware, the context surrounding education are rapidly changing due to changes in society, technology, and even in our students. My belief in the utility of updated current standards makes me concerned about the age of some of our current college and career-ready standards, which are represented in the second half of the 306s. Christine Downing, who you'll hear from later, will likely address the current standards and their age and the need to update them. From my work in the standards, I also learned the importance of clearly articulating what is required versus what is optional. One of the discussions we had in the 306 work group was whether curricular requirements should be permissive or requirements. I believe they're a concept and knowledge that every graduate from a New Hampshire high school should possess. By inserting permissive language that a curriculum area may contain certain concepts and topics makes it possible for districts to pick and choose what graduating students should know and be able to do instead of clearly articulating that required knowledge, skills, and habits of mind. So imagine each of us starting driver education schools.
Yeah. Sorry. We've got it written out. We'll take your written comments and
Okay?
we appreciate it.
We can email. I don't know if you want to give them that or we can email it.
If you email
You
it, it'd
can
be
do both.
great.
What's easier?
Yeah.
Email would be
is great.
phenomenal.
We can share it with
We'll
everybody.
get an email to Angela.
And you want to email me this too? Is this emailable, the list that you gave me? too?
I think so.
That'd be wonderful.
Let me double check.
And if not, yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Irv. Okay.
So we've got Julie Turner is up and Jessica Spillers is on deck.
Right when you do that, I feel like I'm at the horse rally.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to keep it rolling, you know?
You're on deck.
I know, I feel like I should do some warm-up
There you
swings
go.
or
Some
something on the
warm-ups.
front
Yeah,
row.
whatever you gotta do,
All
right?
stretched out,
That'd be good.
right. Good afternoon, Chairman Klein, Commissioner Edelflute, and members of the State Board. I am Julie Turner. I'm a resident of Manchester, a parent of 3 public school students. I am an educator with a New Hampshire teacher's license and a representative for Ward 1 on the Manchester Board of School Committee. Today I come before you to ask for your reconsideration of the latest version of the Ed 306s. As this board may recall, you've seen my signature on submitted letters dated April 10th, 2023, and March 11th, 2024, requesting specific changes to the 306s. I've brought copies of those to submit as reminders, but they include requests for change in the following areas: reinserting the word local and striking the word may and replacing with shall throughout the document, requiring a New Hampshire's teaching certificate for our educators in public schools, placing class size maximums and reintegrating the word equity into the document, tightening up and using explicit language surrounding competencies as well as learning levels, and reinstating requirements for elementary art, music, and physical education. This is not an exhaustive list, but a quick refresher. I represent myself today, but would like to point out that those two letters were submitted a year and an election apart, with signatures of support from 20 of my fellow school board colleagues. There's an overwhelming amount of concern over the proposed changes to the 306s. As I speak before you now, I'm reminded of evenings when I serve on the school board, and I listen to proposed plans and hear public comment. As an educator, I feel most confident weighing in on items, content, and comments related to curricula, class size, educational policy, writing initiatives, STEM proposals, etc. To be honest, sometimes I find myself out of my league when asked to weigh in on decisions that are outside my area of proficiency. Decisions on managing, like Manchester's recent decision on bringing transportation in-house into our district. Decisions on managing a fleet of buses, hiring a complement of drivers, and staffing a transportation manager, coordinator, and dispatcher make me realize that I am not a specialist in this area. I lean on people who have more experience than I do to make informed decisions. I, like you, have confidence that I am an intelligent person who can listen, ask questions, and rely on feedback from those in the field. After reviewing your Meet the Board page on the DOE website, I understand that many of you may be in that same position. As appointed members of this board, you have the great responsibility to make an informed decision on a document that may be outside your prowess. I ask you, professionals, smart people, esteemed business leaders and owners, journalists, former construction workers, and professional development strategists, please listen and hear. You've been presented with countless testimonies rejecting this updated draft of the 306s. You have heard from folks with boots on the ground explaining how this draft erodes public education. New Hampshire educators, principals, superintendents, and school boards have all given feedback that the 306s need work. They are not ready for their New Hampshire debut. Please wait. Please reapprove the current 306 rules until the questions are cleared up, the rules are more intentional, and the multitude of concerns are addressed. The students of the 603 deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jessica Spillers is up and Jim O'Connell is on deck.
Hello, and thank you for taking the time to listen to my concerns. My name is Jessica Spillers. I'm a resident of Manchester, New Hampshire, and a member of the Manchester Board of School Committee, and I'm a mom to 2 young girls. And I'm testifying today in opposition to the proposed changes of the Education 306 rules. And I need to offer up some information about myself, though, that I don't typically disclose. I was homeschooled. And from kindergarten through high school, I was homeschooled. And I don't typically offer up this information about myself because there's a stigma and a general assumption that people who were homeschooled are less educated. Homeschoolers are stereotyped as being overly religious and conservative. People picture women in jean jumpers and culottes teaching the Bible to their kids around a kitchen table. My experience was far from that. My mother was a high school math and physics teacher. She spent hours poring over lesson plans, researching curriculum, to ensure that my brother and I could attend college and be successful. And nonetheless, we ran into jean jumper moms and large families. We encountered folks who were incredibly religious and who used curriculum that only included one perspective. And it was and still is incredibly frustrating how homeschooling education is so wildly inconsistent from family to family. And when I graduated, I hoped the stigma would fade away and that I'd be able to blend in more with my peers. But I was wrong. Because of the effort my mother had put into my education, I excelled, and now I was on the other end of that stigma. Inevitably, professors would ask where I had gone to school, and after answering, I would get some backhanded compliments about, wow, you're smart for a homeschooler, or I would have never known that, you blend right in. At first it was reassuring, but it became frustrating, because instead of focusing on me, they became focused on what they thought they knew about me. It wasn't about my intelligence, it was about how well I did for where I came from. And they had no understanding of where I came from. Even with employers early on in my career, I experienced the same sort of treatment, and they immediately forgot I had a master's degree and was a published research author. I became that homeschool girl again. When there is inconsistency and vagueness in rules, the interpretations from one place to the next will vary and impact the caliber of education students receive. The changes proposed to the Ed 306 rules strip basic academic standards, remove class size maximums, and weaken the overall value of a public education in New Hampshire. And here's the thing, I want my girls to have the same rigorous education I had, just through our public school. I understand fully the time and dedication it takes to educate a person well, and I don't have the expertise to replicate what my mother was able to accomplish. What I don't want to happen for my girls is to get lost in a sea of students because maximum class sizes were stripped from the rules. I don't want to determine how I'm going to pay for an art class because it's now an optional learning opportunity instead of a required course. And more than anything, I don't want my girls to have to prove their worth and defend the caliber of their education like I did because universities and employers have blacklisted our zip code or attribute negative stereotypes to our school district. I want consistency across the state for our children. They deserve a rigorous education that prepares them for whatever comes next, a job, college, or the military. And may I finish?
No, 3 minutes, we're gonna keep the same for everybody. You have written comments that you can leave for us.
I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Klein and Commissioner Edelblut. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Jim O'Connell. I'm the Vice Chair of the Manchester Board of School Committee. And I'm here today to voice my opposition to the proposed changes to the school standards. You know, I think there's one of the points I would like to make is I think that the consultation process I think has been faulty. I don't think, and I don't think that the voices of my colleagues, for instance, on the Manchester Board of School Committee, have been heard, and we have delivered statements and responded at various opportunities to come before you or to deliver information. But there's been a lack, I think, of it seems from the outside looking in that those comments, etc., haven't been seriously considered, or we know that they haven't affected change. So I think it's easy sometimes, as the largest school district in the state of New Hampshire, I think we in Manchester have to be careful not to have an expectation that we should have a special voice or a voice beyond what we deserve. But having said that and recognizing that we are just 1/10 of the state, but we do represent a huge proportion of particular populations when it comes to diversity and need and ELL learners, and the challenges in our district are not repeated generally across the state. But however, the rules made for the state do affect us and affect, in this case, 1 in 10 children in the state when it comes to the city of Manchester. I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said and what others will say around the general lowering of standards. I frankly don't understand the rationale for lowering standards. The removal of arts from requirements is a problem. I don't understand that. The lowering of the standards or reducing of the standards for maximum class size. There are significantly the change from shall to may is a very important difference to me. I think a standard that says may is really not a standard, right? We could recognize it in many places. If you're required to do certain things, when you say may, you automatically imply may not. So automatically a standard that says the standard is you may do this, by inference the standard is also saying just as equally you may not. So I don't know how the word standard and the word may can exist in the same sentence, because one negates the other. So I would ask you to reconsider the 306s. I think they're not ready for prime time, and I'd like to see more work done. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Jason Bonilla.
Just so everybody's clear, we've been getting a lot of feedback that the 306s aren't done and we should do more work on them, when we've had presentations showing that we're doing more work on them, and that this process is ongoing, and the draft that you have in front of you is not the final draft. It doesn't seem like the information is getting back to even the school board of the biggest school district in the state, despite the fact that the NEA and other groups were involved in this process and know that we're still working on these things. The message doesn't seem to have gotten back to people that these are still a work in process, and that we are in fact taking this information in, and it's still a work in progress. So that should have gotten back to people, and apparently it hasn't.
And
Go
then,
ahead.
so Jason's up, but Christine Dowling, you're gonna be on deck if you're coming up again, so go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. Hi everybody. When I started this, my name's Jason Bonilla. So I'm gonna give you a quick context. I got 3 minutes. I know it's gonna be quick. So I got into politics because my lived experiences were a product of broken policies and systems that were not adequate enough to support my education, especially being an English language learner. What's wild is that my very own zip code predetermined my future, right? And I know that they're drafts and they're ongoing, right? So I'm here to just really elevate the stories of these amazing experts on their field, and I know all of you have your own experiences as well to add to this. But it seems like when I read this, it says zip codes are predetermining the futures of our very own children in this state. So now I'm sitting in front of you all, part of one of the decision makers in the biggest city in the state, right? So I am also a school board member representing Ward 5 in the city of Manchester. I want to amplify the comments made by my fellow committee members from the Board of School Committee in Manchester. You know, our king, Sean Parr from Ward 2, has been leading the efforts in ensuring that our feedback gets to you all. And I know you're all reading it. I want you all to see that we're here in person, you know, face to face, that, you know, we truly all have a commitment to all of our kids. And I know that a lot of you, if you hear my name, you'll hear BIPOC, but also I'm here to really elevate the stories of all of our youth and families. I feel like at this point there have been a good amount of experts in their fields, families, community leaders, and elected officials who have expressed their concerns. And I already said that. Many of them are here. So I'm leaning on their expertise as we make decisions, and I know as policymakers we all do the same. Fortunately, I haven't seen many of the inputs from the various listening sessions that you have all had. And again, I know they're ongoing, so hopefully in the future, you know, we can get a lot of our collective input incorporated into these next drafts that are seen to the rest of our community. Mine's pretty short. Gracias, I appreciate y'all, and it's good actually to put a face to the names here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So Christine and Rob Nato is on deck.
Christine Downing, Goshen, New Hampshire. Just following up from this morning, I think we have some good momentum. So I would just encourage us to, you know, let's listen, let's dialogue, let's put forth the best effort we can. I want to go back to those 2 students from Hopkinton this morning. Remember, it's about them, right? And we want to make sure we get that across all our public schools. I also think this interest in the 306 revisions is a time for us to really capture this, get the buy-in, because I'm looking also forward to ahead. It's great to have those solid set of rules, but implementation's the key, right? And if we can get that buy-in, then we can get that implementation, which is the next important step once the rules are in place. So I thank you for your time. I'm available at any point. Reach out.
Thank you. So Rob is up and Chris Prost is on deck. Here, Rob.
Mr. Klein, I had to scratch a few things based on your comments, so thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Rob Nato. In 1987, I began my teaching career as an uncertified teacher at the Landmark School in Beverly, Mass. In 95, I received an MED and went on to teach social studies here in New Hampshire for 24 years. During COVID, I taught at VLAX for about as long enough to have a cup of coffee. I've served on the Hopkinton School Board for the past 5 years. My comments today are my own. I came to last week's hearing to listen and learn. Upon leaving, I couldn't help but think how any Board of Education couldn't agree in whole or in part with the litany of concerns that were outlined by each speaker. Each of those environments that require rules, private, charter, and public, are governed by different sets of rules that allow them to operate efficiently and in the best interest of their student populations. My reason for being here specifically is I don't see a clear articulation of the problems that the proposed changes seek to resolve, but rather vague references to flexibility and vision. So unfortunately, these changes may not be seen as solutions to a problem, but rather the pursuit of an agenda. Some areas of concern can be resolved by modification of current practice, certification for example. I think we can agree that certification and credentials are essential and valuable standard in any industry, whether you're a recruiter in private industry or seeking to fill your medical advisory board. The expectation of certification and license is no less true in public education. Current rules allow for individuals of promise to be hired and pursue certification through Alt 4. If flexibility to broaden recruitment capacity is the goal, it can be done through broadening the parameters of Alt 4, not by diminishing the expectations of credentials. Other flexibility measures could be pursued through the innovations plan that are outlined in RSA 194E, which I didn't really know existed until I did a little background research after last week. Last week, when Mr. Bramante noted the broad range of individuals and groups that have been a part of the revision process thus far, and then many of those same individuals and groups spoke wholeheartedly against the current revisions, the true problem was now clear to me, and the solution even clearer. As a person who's been a party to numerous contract negotiations, now from both sides of the table, I see Ed 306 as a contract. And the most successful negotiations are those in which both parties identify and agree to the problems that need resolution, and then work together to craft a contract that meets those goals. It is not a zero-sum game. Both parties should leave the table believing they have been heard, and the outcome leaves everyone better off. And in this case, that means public school students of New Hampshire, 2 of which from Hopkinton were here this morning, I understand. In closing, I am asking you to tap the brakes on revisions, ensure that specific problems that need action are clearly identified, and work together with all interested parties to craft Ed 306 rules that everyone in New Hampshire can be proud of. That should be the legacy that you leave as a Board of Education. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Awesome timing.
Yeah. Nicely done.
37 years in the classroom.
All right, Chris is up and David Trumbull is on deck.
All right. Hello, my name's Chris Prost. I'm a father, veteran, and small business owner from Croydon. Here to express my opposition to the proposed changes of the Ed 306 rules. I think for a lot of people, the impact of these changes is very undefined, but our town got a glimpse into what they may mean for smaller communities. March 2022, our school district budget was cut by over 50% by the 30-some people who attended the district meeting. Ian Underwood, a close associate of Commissioner Edelblut, pitched the budget cut to attendees and argued it would be easy to do more with less. There was no comprehensive plan to meet the education requirements on such a budget. As we found out over the course of several weeks and many school board meetings, it was going to be very difficult. The reality our town was facing was having the staff of Croydon Village School, known as Little Red, the oldest continuously operating schoolhouse in the country, replaced with Prenda Pod Learning for students in kindergarten through 4th grade. Some online learning overseen by unlicensed guides under the direction of a licensed teacher who was maybe not going to be on site. The option was recommended to our school board by the Department of Education, even though it had never been used as the default district education model in any town before. Older students were faced with families having to pay $7,000 to $9,000 out of pocket to remain enrolled in current public schools or face a similar pod learning experience through a company called KaiPod. A contract with KaiPod got pushed through the Executive Council shortly after the budget cut occurred in our town. And our town had no physical location to house the KaiPod group at the time, nor the broadband capability to support such online programs. It's hard not to see parallels to those plans in the proposed revisions. Many in town were upset by these being the public options for our students. Many were also unsure about the legality of such options as public school in our town. Wondered if we would be opening up our district to lawsuits. Well, the legal team at the Department of Ed advised there would be no legal issues, and independent counsel raised many questions, citing sections of the Ed 306 requirements and RSA 193 that may have been violated should the proposed plan have gone forward. Through grassroots effort, our town banded together to restore the original budget, but it was a warning of what could happen. My concern is that these changes to the standards will remove safeguards to maintain any semblance of equality between districts. Anti-public education groups are already excited and poised to propose cuts to any elements they can should these revisions get adopted. I oppose the proposed revisions as I fear they will allow schools to be closed or replaced with online learning at remote sites and students to suffer, especially in small communities like my own. Thanks.
Thank you.
So David Trumbull's up, and then Jen Gillis, is that Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Commissioner and committee members. Last week I spoke to you about a kind of a constitutional argument, that this was a big policy change that can only be done by the legislature. Today I want to talk about the merits of these changes, and I take Mr. Klein's comments to heart. I'll offer you a solution. I think that we can make regulations that promote alternative education and bring competency-based assessment up to date. At the same time, we can have regulations that have strong minimum standards based on guaranteeing inputs, that is buildings, classrooms, taught by teachers, instruction in all subjects to a certain amount of time and hours per year with a substantial educational program. And we can keep our anti-discrimination laws strong. We can marry a strong input system of education with this outputs competency-based assessment program. There's no reason why they are mutually exclusive. We don't have to dismantle the minimum standards. We don't have to dismantle or defund the public schools in order to have competency-based assessment or to have more alternative education. These new regulations do away with that guarantee of a minimum input system. They replace it with opportunities to facilitate learning, which could be done by anybody with no amount of time required, no classroom required, and no shells as far as the instructions go. The only real requirement is that students have to show some kind of proficiency, or not even, yes, proficiency at the competencies. The problem is that this model has never been tested. Now, competency-based assessment is fine, but it's never been tested in a world in which we got rid of the inputs guarantee that you have a strong system of inputs, a real classroom with teachers in the first place. It's certainly never been tried in school districts which lack adequate funding. That's the issue in New Hampshire. If you pass these regulations, the state's duty to fund education will drop, so the schools will get less money per pupil. Also, the school board won't be able to go to the people of their town and say, here's the minimum budget we need to meet the regulations. If the regulations are watered down, the local budget will drop. That's going to mean that all of the school children who are in schools that are just functioning right now are going to end up in schools that are in chaos, in crisis, because their amount of money that they have available to fund those schools will be dropping so much it will be a disaster for those schools, for those communities, and for those young people who are counting on us to give them a full future. I ask you to take these regulations, put them back on the table, listen to the experts who have come in, and put together a good set of regulations that has alternative ed, that has competency-based assessment, but also a strong guarantee of inputs. That's essential. The only way to make it work is to marry the inputs and the outputs. I believe working with your experts, you can do that. Thank you.
Okay, so Jen Gillis is up, and Andrea Campbell is on deck. And then
Thank you.
can you go, Jack? There should be another sign-in sheet over there, maybe.
My name is Jen Camille Gillis, and I'm the superintendent of the Manchester School District. I'm speaking this afternoon as the leader of the largest and most diverse district in the state of New Hampshire. In my work, I have had many opportunities to review the proposed 306 rule revisions. In addition, I sit on the Education Legislation Committee in Manchester and the New Hampshire School Administrator Association's Equity Committee. In all of these roles, I have approached the 306 draft with a keen eye on the impacts the changes could present for our district and, most importantly, our students. Since I took on my role, I have sought to work with our board and district team to provide paths to close learning gaps for our students exacerbated by the pandemic, lift opportunities for higher level learning, improve graduation rates, drive opportunities for college and career pathways, and push for systems to support a high-functioning public school district in our city. I believe a solid, high-performing public school system equates to a high-performing city. In our work, we focus on three key drivers: educational programming, staffing, and facilities. We know each of these drivers must be tended to and continuously improved to have balance and, in turn, positive opportunities and outcomes for our public education system. The 306 revisions challenge our work in some key areas: class sizes, teacher certification, and instructional standards. In the current form, the draft will negatively impact our work and progress we are making. I want to focus on one aspect of our work, and that is collaboration. As the largest district in the state, we have worked to have our voice be part of the 306 drafts and revisions. I had asked to have representation from our district in this process. To date, we have participated in listening sessions and have submitted feedback via letters to the state board. What we have missed is the opportunity to be included at the table for discussions as to how the 306 revision could impact our district. I would offer that we have a unique role in the state as a means to provide feedback and input into the rules that could impact public education from the perspective of a diverse public education system. This week, the 306 draft was reviewed at our Board of School Committee. I am aware that the board has since reached out to Chairman Klein and Commissioner Edelblut to meet with us. I welcome the opportunity to engage in this dialogue and share a deeper understanding from our perspective, the concerns and our feedback from Manchester. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Campbell and Mary Wilkie is on deck.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Campbell. I'm here representing myself as a member of the Bedford School Board, a concerned parent of 2 students in Bedford, and a dedicated public school teacher, formerly also in Bedford, now working in higher education with aspiring educators looking to enter the field. I'm deeply troubled by the proposed changes to the minimum standards as put forth. These changes threaten to weaken our public education system and undermine local control. Of note and concern is the change throughout the document from what was stated as the local school board to just school board. Is this language a shift? Is this language shift a way to take the local control from the local school boards and shift it to the state board? While this is not clear, it is concerning. I know there's many other changes that are alarming, but I'm only going to speak to 2 of them today. Number 1 being the removal of class size maximums. So eliminating class size maximums disregards the importance of manageable class sizes for effective teaching and learning, which will only exacerbate, in my opinion, the teacher shortage crisis in New Hampshire. I know firsthand how a larger class size can affect classroom behavior, relationship building with students, test scores, and both student and teacher mental health. We all know there's a teacher shortage crisis in New Hampshire right now, and I believe the removal of these maximums will exacerbate this. Who would go into teaching knowing that the size of your class is not based on best practices or research for what is best for children, but is instead determined by who is elected to the school board in your district? The second piece that I wanted to just talk briefly about is the weakening of teacher certification requirements. So as a certified teacher myself and someone who works with students aspiring to become certified teachers, I know how rigorous the process is as set forth by this board and the Department of Education to become a licensed teacher. Changes to the language and definitions threaten to undermine the profession, the professional standards, and may further deter qualified educators from entering or remaining in the profession. These changes not only jeopardize the quality of education for our children, but I believe will also exacerbate the teacher shortage crisis in New Hampshire. Over the last few board meetings, I have watched superintendents, administrators, teachers, school board members, and parents get up over and over to state the same thing. Let our voices be heard in these revisions. I recently read in an article that Commissioner Edelblut stated that this rule proposal had provided you all with more input than any other rule proposal in state history, and that he was happy for the feedback, which is nice to hear. I do hope that the volume of feedback speaks volumes to this board, that the experts in this field have concerns and think we can do better for our children, and that you can in fact listen and apply this feedback. As a school board member, I'll stop there, but thank you very much. I appreciate being listened.
Thank you. And Mary Wilkie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm Mary Wilkie. I live in Concord. I taught middle school science for many years, so I thought I might zoom in on one specific rule, but some of my comments would be applicable to others. I'm looking at section 41C, and I'm concerned about the revisions and hope you do not adopt them. Middle schools are currently required to have a science program that includes lab experiences, field work, observations, investigations, and other inquiry-based activities. These kinds of experiences go to the very heart of what science is. They're highly engaging for students, and they foster deep understanding, yet the proposed rules would make them optional. I'd like to share a quick description of an inquiry-based lesson from a unit on flower parts and their functions. And this is a particularly simple one because other ones are too complicated to get across in 3 minutes. 11-year-olds love hands-on learning, and when I distributed to each child a rhododendron blossom and a magnifying lens, you would think they had just won the lottery. Right away, they started buzzing with observations and questions. Someone points out that one of the 5 petals on the blossom has spots and the others don't. Hey, mine too, others say, and they wonder why. A student notes that the stamen and pistil, which are the structures that come up in the middle of the flower, that they all have a bend at the top. And everyone checks theirs and says, yeah, mine too. Wait a minute, says somebody, do yours all bend toward that spotted petal? And everyone looks and says, yes, why? Does that have something to do with pollination? A student peels open the base of the stamen, of the pistil, and calls out that it's full of little dots, and they look like seeds. Everyone peels theirs back and says the same, and somebody says, how would pollen get from the top to the bottom? Another question to add to our list, our growing list, and on. The lesson went on. Over the following days, students eagerly researched the questions they had generated. Sure, you could show a student a video, and as a result, the student might be able to tell you the names and functions of flower parts, but which activity would lead to a deeper understanding? Which students would experience the wonder of discovery that underlies the whole field of science? Inquiry-based activities need equipment and materials, which can be expensive, and they need teachers to plan and provide the systematic instruction that the current rules insist on, but the proposed rules drop. If the mandates become options, inevitably some financially strapped districts will choose to avoid the expense of hands-on, in-person science lessons and opt for something cheaper. What a loss that would be for the students. And we all know which students these would be. Not those at schools in well-heeled districts, but those in districts that find themselves, as a resident of Pembroke recently put it, choosing between pricing out the elderly or supporting their schools. Please retain the current Rule 41C so all students in all zip codes will have access to high-quality, systematic, inquiry-based instruction in science. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so then.
That is all we had.
I'm just gonna just
That's
check
good
to make
feedback.
sure. So you might get to do the rest of your hearing.
What's that?
You might get to do the rest of your hearings.
Might get
Yeah.
to.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
Appreciate all the feedback. The more specific the feedback, the easier it is for us as we're looking at the rulemaking process. Like general feedback is can be taken in, but the specificity of the feedback is incredibly helpful when it's the science feedback that was just
Mary
given.
pointing out the exact
It just
line
helps.
so we can look it up. That was great. Thank you for that.
Otherwise, we're left to interpret the general overall feedback. So any emails are very welcome with specific feedback to the rules.
Okay.
At least by me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. The more specific, the better when it comes to examples. That's very helpful. So I think we're checking to see if we've got any other people signing up. While we're waiting for that, I think it might be worth just mentioning, because it seems to be a lot of the same points people are making, and some of them involve things that we have already addressed, like class sizes, for example. So in the process of having a conversation about the class size rules, that's a conversation. We were going through the rules, just for an example, just so people kind of know where we are, and seeing all these numbers, right? 20 people in a class, 25 kids in a class, right? And you've got a classroom defined and a number of kids. And so we start to ask questions, why that specific number? Nobody could tell us. If you're gonna have a number written as a mandate, it'd be nice to know why that specific number and not a different number, right? So we suggest, as another way to look at it, we require, as a requirement, an appropriate teacher-student ratio instead of a specific number for a classroom. It's a different way to get at the same goal. So that's the ongoing conversation we're having. The conversation is not, hey, let's just take numbers out and let districts do free-for-all. That was never the conversation. The conversation was, maybe we phrase it differently, maybe we come up with a ratio, maybe we insert language that says research-based or science-based, or that's the conversation we're having. Right? So that was told to a lot of groups that are supposed to be reporting back to people that apparently that message didn't get back. So this is the ongoing conversation that we're having about how to write rules that make sense, but maybe are a little flexible for school districts. Maybe that doesn't work and we have to go back and put numbers in, right? But that's kind of where we are with trying to think of how do we have standards that fit for every district, but maybe aren't quite as rigid as the old way of doing things, right? So that's one example. Unfortunately, that has not gotten communicated backwards as like we thought it was going to. So people apparently think we're just gonna have no standards for teacher-student ratios, which is not the case. So, and those are written in there. So there's a lot of misinformation that's getting out about what's actually in these rules and what our goals and intentions are.
Can I just share another example? Because I heard a lot of testimony, last time and this time as well, like that we're removing teacher certification, and I was trying to figure out what the source of that was. But I don't know if individuals understand, in law several years ago, the term certification got changed to licensure. And so the only change in this rule is to change certification to licensure so that it marries up to what is in the law. So if somebody has some place where they think that we've somehow eliminated the certification and they let us know where they think that is, we're happy to take a look at it. But otherwise it's not clear what that criticism is, so.
And
Drew?
local school board also is,
That was a fun one, right? Yeah.
that's in a definition, so that's in there. We're not doing away with
I
local
heard a
school
couple
boards.
times from people coming up on the 306s that they're submitting their information to Angela or emailing them, and they were feeling that they weren't being heard. So just to let them know, what do you do, or Frank, when you receive all their written submissions?
So
It all gets sent to the board members.
Yeah, so
Right.
here's the way it's gonna work. Okay, so we're in the public comment period, and
Yeah.
so we are accumulating all of that. When the public
Right.
comment period ends, we'll be consolidating it. Julie has a requirement to provide a summary of that. We're gonna put it, like, all the written feedback we get, and we'll summarize the oral feedback. And then I believe we had talked about, scheduling kind of a working session. I think, Phil, this was your idea, to kind of go through, like, okay, here's all the feedback that we've gotten on these rules, and here's what we can do with it. So it's going through the process.
I think they needed to hear that,
Yeah.
what your process was, but.
It's not even my process, this is the rulemaking process,
Right,
right?
but I mean, I
Yeah.
think they needed to hear that. It
Yeah.
sounded like, they thought.
Yeah, there's no black hole anywhere.
Comments were just being filed and that was it.
Yeah.
So, good.
Just really quickly, so we didn't have anybody else who signed up. My agenda just has 1 PM on here. It doesn't have a end time. Is there a noticed end time for this public
There is
hearing?
not.
There is
so
not.
You can just close it when you're done.
All right.
How
Okay.
do people ask questions?
It-
I haven't seen any pink cards.
Yeah, we don't do it that, it's not we're a rulemaking body, we don't do it the way the legislature does. But again, we have ample opportunity for you to submit questions and we can take those and respond, but we don't do public comment as a dialogue here. It's more of for us to get information on stuff. I understand the value though, of being able to ask questions.
Written testimony's open until April 30th.
There you go. Yes, please.
Chair Klein, I just want to make a statement to something you just said
Yeah,
about,
sure.
the maximum class sizes, where did those numbers come from?
Yeah.
I think one of the requests I would make, and this was similar to the 43 courses that
Exactly,
were listed
yeah.
under the program of studies,
Yeah.
because I can actually give you some historical perspective where those maximum class
Sure.
sizes came from.
Yeah.
Because I worked in Nashua in the
Right.
90s when
Yeah.
the state did not have class sizes.
Right.
I particularly had a class size of 42 students.
Wow.
Because there was no class size in my local CBA, and I
Yeah.
can speak to you about some of the conversations that
Sure.
happened at the department. Just like when I heard that nobody knew the reasoning behind the 43 courses to define the program of studies, when Mark
Yeah.
McLean texted me, I said, Mark, I can tell you where that whole number came from, breakdown
Beautiful.
by breakdown. So what I would respectfully ask is that
Yeah.
when you get to those points in the rules,
Yeah.
where you're like, where are these things coming from?
Yeah.
Pause for a second, take a check, ask, do I have the right people around the table that
Yeah.
might be able to provide some background on it?
Well, what we did, so we were asking for that kind of info, and we made a point of sort of bookmarking those as points for ongoing conversation, right?
And
So-
hoping that we get feedback.
and
on
hoping
it.
that we do get this feedback. So, for example, I know 43 is a great example. You know, districts are required to offer 43 different courses, and so we started a conversation with why 43 and not 38. Like, why we don't? Nobody could tell us where 43 came from. So that was a bookmark to have a conversation about how does that number, what should that number be, how should it look, what should we be mandating there. So same thing with the class sizes. It's a bookmark to say, okay, how should this actually best work in practice? How should the language look? Should we, you know, and part of the discussion was, if we use the word class, does that lock districts into a concept of something they might want to change later? So should it be not focused on a building and a room, but focused on a teacher-student ratio? So that's the conversation that we're talking about. But we just want to have that conversation and get those answers, because it may end up looking like it does now. It may end up looking like class, number, that kind of thing. But it's certainly worth having a conversation. I mean, that's kind of our job here, is to question, okay, why is that there? Is there a way to do it better? You know, and that's part of this whole ongoing process, so.
And I think definitions are key to it.
Absolutely.
I think establishing common definitions.
Yeah, and that's a big, that was maybe the biggest part of all the conversations we had is over those definitions, right? So, you know,
Here's where
it's hugely important.
I do think like a working session, like the Commissioner referred to, like in public, if you would, like, I think would be so helpful.
Yeah, you
Because I
just
think
get to
that
wrestle
there's,
with all this input.
I think there's a lot of like similar desire with crossways that like is just, however, getting mixed up in the political milieu, and I think there's a lot more alignment than there is misalignment. We just have to like transparently show that.
Yeah, that's all fair.
Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my read.
I think there's more
Do you have
alignment
a
than not.
comment, Mark?
Yeah, and sorry that I didn't submit a card or sign up, but it seems like we're on a little bit of a back and forth. So there has
Yeah.
been some
Yeah.
feedback relative to class sizes and the 43.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a historical analysis of where those numbers came from, but some perspective and feedback on how those are used to establish a minimum standard for schools, and the fact that what they do in application and why they're important. So that has been submitted to the state board, and I hope that that's something that will be considered. And I think it will be.
Absolutely, yeah, that's what we wanted, was that kind of answers to questions. Right? So, all right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. We didn't have anybody else signed up, so thanks everybody for the feedback.
And I need to make an amendment to my motion
Okay.
for 7E student Pittsfield.
Okay, so proposed amendment to
Yes,
the motion.
the amendment I would like to propose is I move that the state board reject the hearing officer's report and recommendation, and for a finding that RSA 19(4)(d) requires a resident district to pay the tuition of their pupils attending an open enrollment school outside the resident district, regardless of whether the sending district has adopted the provisions of RSA 194(d).
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It was
Okay.
very precise.
Yeah.
Very precise.
Written by a lawyer.
All right, thanks for that amendment. All right, so let's get back to Great Bay Charter School.
Excited for this one. My neck of the woods.
Yeah, waiting off, fighting some big stuff.
Hampshire Charter School Office, Great Bay Academy Charter Public School, for a charter amendment. Peter Stackhouse, Executive Director.
Eric Feldborn.
Eric Feldborn.
Board trustees.
Board trustees.
Welcome, sorry it took a while to get you in, but appreciate your patience.
It's almost like we have these experiences where we try to get out into traffic and the timing is awful. We just live through that. It's good to be back with you again. My name is Peter Stackhouse. We were together at the emergency meeting a couple of short months ago, and you folks graciously granted approval for us to take on fifth graders, which we did, and that has gone extremely well. At the time, we were asked, what is your plan regarding K to 4? Do you have any thoughts on that or considerations on that? At the time, we just felt like we needed a little bit more time to consider all of the different ramifications and logistics around that. So what we've done is we've submitted an application asking for the expansion of our school program to include grades K to 4, and in addition to our 5 to 12 program, and also allowing us to increase our enrollment from our current level of 170 to 287, which will accommodate the additional grades. In addition to that, we felt like it was important for us to update our charter document, because the original charter document that was approved in 2004 for grade Bay e-learning charter school at the time, we're a different entity than we were at that time. We are a different, philosophically, we're very much the same school with the same similar mission, but we're not overseen by the Exeter Region Cooperative School District anymore. We're completely independent, serving students from 30 different communities. So we wanted to make sure that we had our charter document up to date to reflect the different evolution aspects of our program.
No, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
I know you spoke to this before, and you spoke to this in the submission, but how many students do you have now?
165 today.
And the addition of the 5th grade brought you in?
So it was actually, we opened the year at approximately 140, and the circumstance that led to us coming forward to ask for 5th grade, at that time we added 4 5th graders from that school, but we also added 18 other students from that school. So we have since added 2 additional 5th graders from other schools.
Kind of bouncing around a little
Yep.
bit, I apologize, but with the addition of K through 4, are you going to stagger that or just do it all at once?
So our plan is to do it over at least 2 years. Our program has been kind of unique because we originally started as a grade 8 to 10 program. So we've actually been here several times before to ask about expanding our program, and hopefully this is the last time. But we worked from 8 to 10, and then we got grades 11 and 12. So we were allowed, our students, our first graduating class in 2008 was allowed to graduate. And then we've been adding grades in a backwards fashion. So our plan right now is to add grades 3 and 4 next year, and then move forward with the other grades as our logistical issues allow.
You might find, like a lot of other charter schools, that kindergarten is it's in demand.
Yep.
And it's a wonderful feeder, if you will, to kids grow with you and stay with you.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just a great way to do that. So you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we just want to be real cautious and conservative about how we do this. We want to do a good job for our school and for our students, and we have to build the organizational capacity to take on the little ones. And the 5th graders have been integrated enthusiastically, and they're a wonderful group to work with. But 5th and 6th grade, it's kind of similar.
Last question, well, maybe not last, but for now. You have the space for all of it.
So we have been leasing, we're actually leasing 2 wings of the former Exeter High School building down in Exeter. There is a vacant wing in the front of that building. We've approached the district about potentially expanding into that. It'll create a continuous connection to our current program. We do have, as it stands now, we would have the space to accommodate what we're doing. But that, we have to work the logistics out with them, but we'll some time to do that.
So I'm really excited about this, like being, I'm in District 3 myself, so I was looking, are you co-located with SST? Is that the same?
We are attached to SST.
Like, is there any concern with having littles, that little, and like SST like co-located? Because there'd be a lot of, like, I know like Newmarket sends a ton of people to SST, we're not the only ones, right? Like, so there's a ton of older kids, like way outnumbered from, you know what I mean?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Sure. That's a great question. My name is Eric Feldborg, and I'm on the Board of Trustees. I actually worked for Peter for 8 years, and then went off and did other things, and then back on the Board of Trustees. It's a great question. Thankfully, the entrance to SST is on the other side of the building, tightly controlled, and the odds of SST students even seeing our little kids visually is almost impossible the way the whole setup is there. So it's a great question. That's one of our concerns as well. But I think our physical setup is going to be conducive to answering all the concerns around those issues. Make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
We're early in the process too, but we envision that we might have opportunities to partner with SST in terms of like the extension of their early childhood program. They have a preschool program, pre-teaching program. You know, if we can build that partnership to, you know, involve working with our students, you know, that would be fantastic.
I guess my other question would be around, again, it's just like having, my littles are little right now, right? Like they're just different, right? Like the play space, right? Like play space for them is just different from like recess space or like for like high school kids, right? Like any plans in that space yet?
There's a lot of open space on the campus that we have access to. Currently, it's in the form of athletic fields. I mean, it's enclosed in a fence area. The YMCA uses some of that space as an after-school program. But there's plenty of space. We don't have, right now there are no plans or discussions about structures or you know, small things like that. But we do have plenty of space, a lot of campus opportunities.
The board is looking forward to kind of investigating what that should look like for the kind of school that we run, and what should come, you know, what should the earlier grades look like to prepare kids to continue on. So we're really kind of energized about investigating what that might look like. We don't have the answers yet. It's a cart and a horse thing. We wouldn't want to be premature and set all that up before having the permissions to be able to put those in.
I very much appreciate your sort of backwards entering people, right? Like starting at like the higher, closer to where you are grades and entering back, because it is like just, I mean, you're educators, you're aware, right? The developmental abilities, it's just a different stage of development.
Right.
Great job of your budget, working with your budget. I like that. Slow growing, no?
I'd love to come out and take a look.
Good.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Charter schools, it's always, because our revenues are certainly driven by our enrollments, and to this point, we've not been a school that's been at capacity in all of our upper grades, so, you know, we're methodical about the way we do it. The way, you know, thoughtful about how we use our resources and.
Can I ask a model question? I'm sorry, extending this meeting. So I know that your numbers here are based by grades, right? Like your project-based learning, and you're like, is there flexibility for aptitude of like, hey, if someone is operating like in one domain at a different level, like, are they like, well, you're in this grade, you got to be here, or do they have the opportunity to expand?
Yeah, I mean, we do have mixed grade groupings. We have middle school students that are working with some of our high school students in different subject areas, math, for example. You know, we just have to have that flexibility in order to be able to make it work. So, you know, we're definitely open to it. It's not anything that we try to make it happen. We're trying to find solutions rather than barriers.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You know, it's to be flexible. It's really important. Our parents have appreciated that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say, Peter, I appreciate, and it's evident in every time you come before us, how methodical and careful you are. It really is. It really comes through. I mean, you guys don't come to us with any willy-nilly stuff. You're always prepared. You always have, everything is very, very methodical and very planned and very well organized, and it shows. So
I appreciate that.
I just want to commend you for that.
I move that the State Board of Education approve the amendment of the Great Bay Charter Public Schools Charter. Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, guys. Keep up the good work.
Good
We're gonna,
job.
we're gonna text them, they'll be real happy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's gonna be some happy families that are gonna be calling you.
Good
Come out for a
job.
visit.
I'm just curious, Peter,
Hey,
how many
Eric.
families will this impact that has littles?
Probably 15 to 20.
That's what I was gonna guess
Wow.
15.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
plus
pretty awesome.
others that have called that we haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
Good luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, Big Brothers Big Sisters. We're everywhere someday.
That's what Travis will know. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're already going to extra.
Tim, are you up?
Yeah, no, come on.
That was just so long ago for me.
Well, I am.
Good afternoon, Tim Carney, Administrator of Educational Pathways. So today we're looking for a renewal, 5-year renewal for the Big Brothers Big Sisters of New Hampshire Learn Everywhere program. And I have Casey here from Big Brothers Big Sisters, and if you want to introduce yourself. And
Yeah, I'm Casey Leffler. I'm the program coordinator for Mentor 2.0. I currently am embedded at West High School in Manchester. After we launched the program last year, and we're in our second year right now, so we have about 15 students, and we're looking forward to next year where we have another 30 students currently are interested in the program. So,
I'm glad you're back for a renewal.
thank you.
I thought your program was really interesting and would prepare kids well for a future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great program. We have it in Littleton. Fantastic.
Yeah. Any questions or discussion? And motion?
I move that the State Board of Education approve the Big Brothers Big Sisters of New Hampshire Learn Everywhere renewal application with a giant thank you very much.
Exactly. All in favor?
Aye.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Go make some good citizens out there.
We'll try.
We're gonna sign these for you before you roll.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. We're ready. Okay.
Great, thank you. I'll catch up.
All right, Tim, you have another item up here.
Yes. So the next item is a request to the board to recognize NEASC as an approved agency for accrediting non-public schools for a period of 10 years.
Okay. Any discussion?
Representative NEASC is here.
My name's George Edwards. I'm the Chief Accreditation Officer at the New England Association of Schools and Colleges and a resident of New London, New Hampshire. So it's nice to be here today.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for surviving the eclipse and making it back down.
And the snowstorms
And the
fortunately, in the last couple of weeks.
Any questions or discussion?
That's great.
I move that the State Board of Education accept the recommendation of the NSAC and identify NEASC as a recognized program approval agency for non-public schools for the period of April 11th, 2024 through April 11th, 2034.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Julie, I think you're up. All right.
Hello.
you can explain it better than I can.
Sure. So we have here a preliminary objection response. You guys have seen these forms a couple of times. Unfortunately, legislatively, we don't have the option to do conditional approval for this process. And so it's a preliminary objection response. I included the communication to Joe Carr. There's several minor changes. One of the forms is now matching the rule text. And we had to, yep, I'll say that in a second.
Okay.
There were some, they talked about needing notarized documents, which was an outdated thing that wasn't being done anyway, and it needed to be explained in rule, but we just took it out because we don't actually do it. And so that was removed, and then there were some citations were fixed to point to the correct text from the forms to the rule. There is an amendment that is not on those forms that I wanted to bring up. Two of the forms DOE BOC 5 and DOE BOC 7 have the wrong address on them. They have the 101 Pleasant Street address, and they need to have the 25 Hall Street address. So I'm hoping you guys can vote on that amendment for those two forms, unless there's anything else that you have concerns or questions about with these.
Nope. I have a motion to approve the preliminary objection response to ED 505.08, Bureau of Credentialing Forms.
Second it.
Does that include the, we need
With,
amendments?
yeah, I need the amendments
With,
to.
with the amended addresses?
With the
Changing
two
their address.
specified forms, address amendments.
Right.
Okay. Second?
Second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Can I just inform the board of one item? I've gotten feedback from the field and just heard it again now during the 306 public comment period. This discussion around removing, licensing for teachers, right? And I know we've changed the wording from certification to licensure. Licensure nationwide is generally recognized as something that a governmental entity gives out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give out a certification, they give out a license. Think driver's license, plumber's license, so forth, right? Whereas private industry uses the term certification.
Right.
So that's why the move over the last few years around the country has been to change that terminology to licensure. So just a little bit of background there, but that's, licenses are what governments give out,
Yeah.
certifications are what non-governments give out. So.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I did hear back from OLS regarding the conditional approval response, so that was approved. And so those rules, the ED 1400 Learn Everywhere rules are ready to adopt if you so move.
Motion to adopt ED 1400 regarding Learn Everywhere.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's all I got
Thank you.
for you.
Okay, so Anne needs to go, you guys, because she is gonna miss her flight if she doesn't.
Oh,
Yes,
you can't miss your
so,
flight.
Like, is that okay if I kick you out of here? Yes, go, please.
Yeah, we're
She's
pretty much
trying to
done.
hang tight, we're done, like there's
Yeah,
nothing.
thanks, Ann.
Safe journey.
Yes, safe
You're
travels.
not even asking
Safe
to bring you
travels.
home anything?
Where you going?
Oh,
Just the consent
You
agenda.
go to Paris?
Oh, yeah, chocolates. Chocolates, please, that's all I've.
Are we finally gonna be there? Just a week. No.
It's just a week in Paris.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're going to Ardennes and Champagne and
That's good.
Wow.
and
Chocolates, macaroons, anything like that.
Petit peu français, mais.
Oh, yeah, why did you pop outside?
Oh, God, here we go.
Ja, aber
This is amazing.
kannst du Deutsch?
There we go.
Ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch.
Wow. My oldest now, is, one of his majors is German, so
Ah.
he can now talk to me and I don't understand what he's saying, so.
Commissioner will often speak French to me and I'll say, try
Thank
again.
y'all very much, and I'll see you in May.
Okay, we'll see you then.
With bells on. Okay, or something.
Safe travel.
Maybe a
Bonne
beret.
Bonne journée.
Maybe a
Yeah.
Are we still thinking, I was hoping to be gone by 3.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
think we're out of here.
That
Yeah.
should be no
I knew
problem.
I had you out of here by 3, but I knew she had it too, so.
Yeah.
You still have a couple more, just the consent agenda.
Oh.
It's a love fest.
I know. Everybody loves everybody.
It's better last week.
What's that? Is this a really your official last?
Yeah.
You said that
Maybe
too
not
many
just,
We'll
no, we don't
see.
say, we don't say
We'll
that,
see.
yes, don't.
We'll see.
We don't say that.
Yeah,
We'll-
don't.
The answer
Okay.
is yes, it's my last.
Commissioners update.
Do you guys want to do consent agenda first?
The what?
Do you need to adopt anything off the consent agenda first?
I mean, you're first on the agenda.
Okay, so I'll go ahead, I didn't know if Phil,
Yeah,
if we're
that's
going and Jim needs to roll here.
We have a quorum with 3 still. at
We
this
do.
point.
Yeah, but
It's
if we're, yeah, we're
Okay,
good.
that's fine. So a couple of quick things. So the Bureau of Special Education was awarded the National Center for Accessible Educational Materials. And this is really, do you guys remember Mary
Lane.
Lane?
Oh,
who-
yeah.
I forgot only because she retired and now she's back. She left and she came back. But she does a ton of work and we hold like these, you guys have never been to one of them, but we have like these kind of trade shows, and we get vendors coming in about all the accessibility things for individuals with disabilities. And it is so cool to watch the families come through and like learn about these things that they just had no idea existed. And they're like, wait, I can do this? And like, yes, you can. And so She was recently awarded, got an award by the Office of Special Education Programs, so we're excited about that. The VR Berlin office was also recognized as the recipient from the White Mountain Community College President's Community Partner Award. Employees Stephen Alward and Rose Long, vocational rehabilitation counselors up there, worked very closely with the college to just make sure that people are able to access their post-secondary stuff.
Yeah.
So we were excited that they were recognized for that as well.
Good.
Yes, exactly. We had a Kingston educator. I have all these awards, right? Kingston educator has been chosen as the New Hampshire 2024 state finalist of the prestigious Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. So her name is Brandy Bulldog. She's a former math interventionist and teacher in kindergarten at the Daniel Baki Elementary School in Kingston. We want to congratulate Brandy on this well-deserved recognition and for making a profound difference in her classrooms. It is incredible, the work that she's doing. We had another bonus Teacher of the Year program. It was over 300 nominations this time, right? We didn't quite hit our applications. We were at 77 applications, which is still kind of just a huge number of applications. Remember, you get nominated, and then you have to fill out this very rigorous process to get your application done. Last year we were in close to 100. This year we got 77, which is still a very good number. And so we are, working through that Teacher of the Year process, and it's been great. I had a chance to meet with the current Teacher of the Year just recently and talk to her about some of her aspirations relative to reading and making sure that little kiddos know how to read and that we don't leave anybody behind. Two other things that I wanted to flag for you. We're going to talk about the audit because I know that's on the consent agenda a little bit, but it was interesting. They described the program. He mentioned that Army came to the school. So that's not the military. That is the Advanced Regenerative Medicine Initiative. Manufacturing Initiative. So that is a great program. We actually have that in 26 schools now across the state. And I was on a call with them just recently.
Amazing.
It is, because this is hard to get anybody to do anything, right? And we're going to have them up at the superintendent's conference and continue to push that. But great opportunity. The way they have structured it is kind of like I think it's about a 12 or 16 week program when they go into the schools and they do it. It's a very engaging thing for the kids because these kids feel like they're scientists, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I am creating the next thing, and it's cool to watch. So.
They are. I mean, they're on that first rung.
They really are. Exactly.
They're really. I mean, they're basically
a new spleen, right? Or new blood. Yes, exactly, right?
I think it's great.
It's an incredibly engaging program. Yes, and that is actually, you guys have awarded. That program is a Learn Everywhere program as well. So the kids who are going through there are able to get science credits. So, and the next thing we're going to talk, we had a lot of people came in today and we're talking about special education. I think we're going to get some more testimony from a couple of those folks who didn't understand the public comment process. I know Christina's going to talk a little bit about the audit, but one of the things that you're hearing, and they brought some of that to you, but I don't know if it's really in your wheelhouse to be able to do, in your jurisdiction to necessarily be able to intervene on there, and there's a lot of conversation and stuff over at the legislature, and we've had a lot of conversation. I mean, what I think some people don't realize, and I'm happy to have audits. They can audit us all day long. In fact, that's what they do. We have every single audit going on over here that we possibly could have going on. But when they're auditing us, so for example, you're going to see an audit here, and there's like we processed about 300 of these dispute resolutions, which come, some of them end up, that's some of the stuff that you're doing as well. But that's a very small slice of what's happening in special education. I mean, statewide, we spend about $900 million a year in special education. The department has about 100 million of that. Truthfully, 68 of which is pass-through, right? Like we don't even touch it anyways, we just push it out to the school. So of that 900 million, maybe 30 or something like that is here. And so when we focus on our efforts here, we really are not getting a lot of the big picture, because much of these, as you heard from some of these parents, the issues happen and we don't even know about them, right? They have a problem with their kid, they talk to the school. If it gets resolved, that gets resolved. If it doesn't get resolved, then we don't know about it, then we don't know about it, right? It's just a problem that's happening out there, and we're unaware of what's going on. So, I mean, that is really one of the areas that we're trying to figure out. How do we help the schools more effectively kind of address this? And it was interesting, and it was one of these cases that came in here, and she shared her story, and so I may not get all of her facts correctly, but she shared here, but it's one of these complaints that did come to me, right? And I don't know how we strike the right balance, because in an IEP process, you know, the parent is a member of the IEP team, but not a weighted member in any way, right? They're just a member on an IEP team. I mean, in that particular case, so you have a parent who, you know, the child was in kindergarten. The school was suggesting, it's August, saying like the kid's going to go to first grade. You know, mom, who came in and shared with us, is concerned, like, something's off. I'd like to hold the kid back here. Like, I don't think they're ready, right? You know, school says, nope, we don't like holding kids back. We're going forward, right? So mom pulls her kid out of school, not an insignificant thing, says, I'm going to try homeschooling, right? Homeschools the kid on her own. In January, she's homeschooling. She's like, something's off here, right? And pays out of her own pocket to get evaluations done on her kid to discover that there's a problem. Says like, yes, I think there's a problem. You know, struggling with the homeschool and the problems, enrolls her kid back into a public school so the kid has access to special education services, meets with the district around that, and they're like, you know, the initial response is no, everything's okay. You know, keeps persistent. That's in May, gets told like, no, everything's okay. In August, okay, maybe they have a 504 plan, right? And mom's like, and is asking for evaluations, and be like, no, they don't need that. You know, in October, resurfaces, says like, we have to do these evaluations, something's off, right? They finally do the evaluations, and in January, the kid finally gets an IEP. You know, this is 18 months later. And so what I'm trying to impress on my team as we're talking to folks is, like, we have to find a way to recognize that input from the person who's going to know the kid the best, which is oftentimes the parent. Because in that particular case, like, there were some glaring signals, right? Like, I'm asking, like, I think my kid should be held back here. Nah, we're going to keep going. You know, not an insignificant thing. Okay, then I'm going to homeschool him and work on it. I'm going to pay out of pocket to do my own evaluations. Like this parent is sending us all kinds of signals. Like, I need some help here. And we just keep moving past those. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we help the system recognize those signals as being substantive and important for the child, and not have this delay in process.
Did I hear that properly, though, that the IEP only occurred after she filed an appeal with you?
That's correct.
Yeah, so it was...
But we had a lot of, I guess what I'm saying is, like, it's easy in hindsight, right? So I'm not trying to recreate the thing, but we had a lot of, like, breadcrumbs along the path here, and we just got to figure out how to make sure that we're identifying those breadcrumbs. So.
Yeah, and I think your point that the vast majority of the stuff just occurs between a parent and IEP team or school administrators at the school level. Never, whether it's successfully concluded or unsuccessfully.
We just don't know, right?
Exactly. You don't get to know. Almost all of that
light
happens.
is shined on it and a note goes to the principal, then...
Even in those cases, I mean, there's
it's hard
so
to even,
many,
right?
And part of it is because if you're a parent and you're being told by 8 people around a table, well, this is really best, we're the experts, we know what your kid needs. It's really hard when you don't know the jargon or the terminology or the research or any of that. It's hard to push back.
Well, and sometimes to your point, they're imprecise because they're not experts at it, right? So they're trying to say, like, something's off, but I don't know what.
You don't know, and we've seen this kind of thing when we have parents articulating to us who aren't lawyers, trying to make a legal case. Sometimes the parent, and look, a lot of times the team is right, you know? Sometimes parents...
Probably more often than not, but...
Yeah, probably most of the time, the team is right. But you have situations where the parent senses something and knows something, and the team isn't getting it, and you have this lack of communication or whatever it is, and those things often don't get
Is it to give them
work
more
out.
authority in the process, or to give them more resources, maybe someone to help
I don't
them?
know what
I don't
the
know the
answer
right
is,
answer,
but, you know, because
there's
we want to, you know, we want all those voices at the table. How do we not let the signals get
Yeah,
past
and I
us?
think these things are structured in a way to help the kid. Like, everybody at that table wants to help the kid. You know, but we keep seeing instances where the kid doesn't get the help that the specific type of help they need, or things are unsatisfied with the parents, and so there are some breakdowns, and I think trying to figure out how to make that work better is useful. And a lot of times, I mean, I can tell you from a lot of parents I know who've had kids in these similar situations, sometimes you'll see, even at the highest performing school districts in the state, you know, parents withdrawing their kids over IEP issues.
So there's just not working, so because they're trying to find something that's gonna work, right?
Yeah.
That's one of those signals. If the parent says, fine, I'm gonna try something else, it's like they're saying like, I don't think you can solve my problem, because everybody wants to have the problem solved, but they've concluded that that's not where they're gonna get it solved.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's where like socioeconomic inequity comes into place. Some people have the resources
Right.
to withdraw,
Yeah,
and then
some
send,
don't.
be like, we're gonna find something else, and then someone who doesn't have the resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They, like, ones who are most susceptible to fall into the societal cracks, start falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
And I think probably most of the time, the accommodations that the IEP team is making work, and they know what they're doing, they really are trained and educated in this stuff. Sometimes they don't work, and that's where we have, and I'm not saying this is the case every time, but we do seem to, we see some cases where the toolkit isn't the right toolkit for that kid, you know? What we're offering as accommodations or as a fix isn't really what that kid needs. And I think that's part of where we see that breakdown and that difficulty come into an agreement. And that's when you see the parent say, you know what, I'm out. And I don't wanna see that. I don't wanna see the parent say, I'm out. I wanna see them be able to solve that in the school and keep the kid there and come to a good solution.
So one more pivot on you, one that I'll share with you. So on, I think it was Tuesday night,
Was I down in Massachusetts?
Yes.
yeah, so Tuesday night I had an opportunity to speak on a panel on an issue that I think is important, and it was called College in 3. But basically, there is a fairly substantive conversation taking place across the country around trying to find opportunities for students to be able to get out of college in 3 years, not in necessarily